So, good people, great people, guys, people. What the deal, what the deal, what the deal? How y'all doing? Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed their Sunday. Hope everybody's feeling fantastic. Hope if you went to church, you got the, the Holy Ghost that you needed. Hope that if you went to brunch, like I did, you got the vibes that you needed. And today, we're going to talk about, party. But in such a way where it is addressing how it is that we tend to engage in our own examinations of relationships, right? I'm going to put my teeth in because y'all know me, you feel me? Yes, sir, yes, sir. We can't do the recording without the grill, you feel me? Yes, but today we're here to talk about, right, but less about Megan Party and more about how it is that we as individuals look at, and y'all gotta see, there it is. How it is that we as individuals tend to engage in relationship dynamics that are not ours in such a way where we approach it from the lens and from the perspective of our own relationship trauma, right? So the reason why I wanted to talk about the Megan Party situation is because I felt that it was extremely intriguing, right? Why did I feel like it was intriguing? Well, for a couple reasons. One, y'all know me. Y'all know that I'm a therapist. You all know that I do a lot of work with couples, with individuals, with, groups. And the one thing that I've learned being a therapist is that things are not always as they seem, right? Things are not always what we want them to be in order to validate what it is that we feel is the right or appropriate thing, right? And it's very interesting to see it that way because we, once again, have a tendency to frame things, external things, things that have very little to do with us from our own perspective of trauma, right? A lot of the things that we talk about, a lot of the things that we, engage with, not only just on social media, but from news, X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. A lot of these things are informed by our own personal trauma, right? So when I saw what was unfolding between Megan Thee Stallion and Pardison Fontaine, like I'm not one who usually gets into celebrity gossip. Like, that's not me. I don't enjoy that type of conversation, honestly, because I feel like I have better things to do with my time, right? It's not judging the folks who, enjoy the celebrity gossip, who enjoy the tabloids. I'm probably going to fuck around and watch the Baddies East with my partner after I get through with this. But for me, because there is usually very little truth or very little transparency or very little of us really understanding what's going on behind the scenes, it's very difficult for me to say to myself, what's being placed in the tabloids, what's being placed in the news, what's being placed on social media is what's going on, right? What's usually happening is that we are being given a distilled version, or we are being given the most sensational version of what's going on. So if you're not aware about the Megan Thee Stallion, Pardison Fontaine situation, Megan Thee Stallion released her record about the difficulties that she's experiencing with her life, her anxieties, her pains, and there was a line in it that referenced her partner, which was Pardison Fontaine, her catching him in the bed that she used to sleep in. And of course, y'all know me. Y'all know I be on the social medias with the women folks and the men folks. And I saw how the women folks were responding. It was like, Pardison Fontaine, we ride at dawn. Pardison Fontaine, we coming for your ass. Pardison Fontaine, you ain't shit, right? And I'm not gonna lie. Usually, I reserve my responses because 9 times out of 10, that's what's happening. Like, the man done did some off the wall shit. He done did something that's, unspeakable, things of that nature, right? So for example, like with the Diddy and Cassie situation, Diddy did that shit. It ain't nothing you can tell me. It ain't nothing you can. Cassie was like, he did that shit. And 3 days later, it's a settlement. Yeah, Diddy did that shit. He did it. Can't what nobody say. Diddy did that shit, right? But when we are talking about situations where there is a response, and a response similar to what Pardison Fontaine had, for me, it is very intriguing to watch how these things unfold, right? It is very intriguing to see both sides of the story because, once again, as a clinician and as as somebody who's worked in mental health a lot, as somebody who has had conversations with both men and women about relationship dynamics, very rarely is it the way that one person says that it is, right? Very rarely. And we are used to situations wherein which men are the aggressors or men are the ones who are engaging in, the harm, or men are the ones who are engaging in the lack of integrity. Men are the ones who are engaging in the lack of a number of things, right? But when I listen to Pardison Fontaine's record, that's not the feeling that I got, right? Now, let me make a disclaimer, right? I do not believe that Pardison Fontaine is innocent, not in any way, shape, or form, right? I do not believe that this man did not do anything to Megan Thee Stallion, right? I don't believe that. What I believe more so is that this situation is a great example of how it is that we as people are less likely to look at the entirety of how it is that something has played out based upon being locked in our own emotional disposition or being locked in our own particular traumas, right? So, Pardison Fontaine's record, he says all of these different things about Megan Thee Stallion, bringing up her liposuction, bringing up what was going on with Gayle King, bringing up what was going on in their relationship, and a couple of things. One, the interview with Gayle King and how it related to her issue with Tory Lanez. I feel like that was a little far. You dig what I'm saying? Like, there's a tendency for us as individuals where when we feel harmed or when we feel hurt, we want to return that hurt, we want to return that harm. I feel like that, bringing up Gayle King, that was an example of that. I want to take this screw and I want to continue to turn it in such a way where you as an individual recognize that I'm not the one to be fucked with, or I'm gonna get you, like the tit for tat, the back and forth, right? So, because I've had a number of conversations with a number of different women, and I've had conversations on different platforms about what and how this actually played out. And I've seen a number of people have conversations about how they felt about what Pardison did, right? What I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to approach it from the perspective of each person in a relationship, whether or not we want to admit it or whether or not we want to acknowledge it, they are dealing with their emotional responses to things in the way that they've learned how to deal with their emotional response. So I'm going to contextualize this conversation in that way first. So a lot of people are looking at Pardison's track as a cover-up for what it is that he has done to Megan Thee Stallion. I could see it that way. I could, right? Where my hiccup comes in, or where my, I guess you call it my mental click, or my brain pops on, is the idea that Megan was engaging in things that he would perceive as infidelity, right? Now, here's the reason why I say this, because I had a very intense conversation with another content creator on Instagram, and she was like, "Oh, you capping for this nigga XYZ ABC?" I'm like, I'm not going to minimize what it is that you're saying. I simply do not agree, right? I believe that we can have a conversation about how it is that Megan was approaching her own individual traumas, how it is that she was approaching the way in which she was attempting to manage those things, how it is that it impacted Pardison, and how it is that Pardison retaliated. Now, I will say this again. I don't believe that anybody is innocent in this situation. I don't. I really don't, right? What I believe is that this was a great teaching example for people who are looking to learn how to navigate emotional intelligence and emotional regulation in relationships in a more healthy way. This is a great example, right? So, if we're going through Party's record, if we're going through what it is that he said, if we're going through how it is that he navigated it, if we're going through what it is that he, what it is that he put out, it was a diss track. We know it was a diss track. And we know that most people don't put out diss tracks unless they feel some type of way, right? The first thing that I heard was that Megan said one line and Party made a 5-minute song. Now, in my experience as a clinician, once again, if somebody has an incongruent response, and incongruent means that it does not match the stimuli, what is usually happening is that that person either A, has a number of things that they've bottled up, a number of things that they have not made clear, a number of things that they have not communicated, right? The second thing that's usually happening is that this person is attempting to cover up their own tracks. They're attempting to cover up what it is that they've done. They're attempting to not make it clear that they've done what it is that they've done, right? So me and my content creator friend, we were having this conversation, and she said that in the record, Pardison admitted to what it is that he did. I agree. Pardison straight up and down said, I did what I did, right? Which is the reason why I say straight up, Pardison is not innocent. Party's not innocent, right? But he was being retaliatory. Retaliatory for what and why, right? So a number of people who I've talked to, right, are talking about how it is that the way that Megan was moving, the way that Meg was, not being honest about what it is that she was doing in the industry, about how it is she was engaging with these other men. I'm not saying that she did. I'm not saying that she didn't, right? But in Pardison's record, he was saying, oh, you were texting these other men, you were doing X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. I want to be very clear. If you are in a relationship with somebody, if you are in a committed relationship with somebody, and this person is asking you, hey, who is this person? What do they mean to you? How is it that this person is engaging with you? Is this something that you all have engaged in? If you tell that person no, or if you walk around it, it's a lie. It's a lie, right? Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a cherry on top of it, right? There are a number of women who I've engaged with. There are a number of women who I've communicated with. There are a number of women who I've, talked to where the idea of omission of information is the same as a lie. I'll say that one more time. The omission of information is the same as a lie, right? So if you are omitting information because you are afraid of the outcome, I can understand that. I can validate that, right? Sometimes we are afraid of how it is that somebody's going to respond to our truth. I get that. I understand that. That does not remove the person's emotional response, and that does not remove the person feeling like you lied to them, right? Now, am I saying that Megan lied? No. Why? I wasn't there, right? Nobody was there. It was between Megan and Pardison. What I'm talking about is the communication dynamics in what to us seemed like once again, a committed relationship, right? Because the way in which people were responding to Meg's one line, they were assuming, or they were saying, oh, Party cheated, he did this, he did that, he did that. Okay, that's fair. That's fine. I can live with that, right? On the other side of that, in Pardison's record, a lot of the content of the record was talking about how it is that he felt as if though Megan was not being straight up with him. Megan was not being honest with him. Megan was not being forthcoming with how it is that she was engaging with the other men in the industry, right? So my content creator friend said that, oh, that's not his business. I don't agree with that. I do not, right? Because in Pardison's record, he was saying, she had me dapping up with men who I know or who she had engaged with sexually, right? There are a number of women who would be upset if a man did the same thing to them, right? I'm not mad that y'all had sex. I'm mad that you did not tell me. I'm upset that you did not let me know. I'm upset that you did not allow me to have the ability to regulate myself in such a way where if this were to happen or if this reality were to come to pass, I would know how to deal with it, right? If we are looking at it from that perspective, I can understand why Pardison was upset, right? I can understand where it is that he's coming from, and I can understand why it is that he moved the way that he moved, right? Once again, not justifying it, I simply understand it, right? So I was having a conversation with another one of my lady friends, and not that type of lady friend, but another one of my friends who's a woman, right? And what she said, and I agreed. What she said was, a number of women lie about their sexual encounters with men because they are afraid of the social backlash. They are afraid of the retaliation from their partner. They are afraid of how it is that they are going to be perceived. I understand that, right? There are a number of men who will become violent. There are a number of men who will become very demeaning. There are a number of men who will become extremely judgmental based upon how it is that this woman engages with this man. That's one, but also two, y'all know in the industry they have NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Sometimes you literally cannot say anything. You cannot, right? Outside of all of those things, outside of every one of those things, if the dynamic of engagement was that in a committed relationship, I'm going to let you know what's going on, you're going to let me know what's going on. It is difficult for me to trust you beyond a particular point if you are not telling me the truth, right? And once again, in terms of societal perception, in terms of the idea that this woman is hypersexual, in terms of the idea that this woman is very sexually open, in terms of the idea that this woman could be a whole, this, that, and the third, all of these things are apparent, right? And these are very real things that women deal with. If that is the reality of the situation, in a relationship, in a healthy relationship, that is where your courage comes from, right? The courage to truly face and the courage to truly engage with your partner in such a way where you are saying to them, hey, listen, I'm apprehensive to tell you this. I'm afraid to talk about this because of how it is that I've been engaged with in the past, right? But because of my moral compass and because of how it is that I believe that these things should be done, I want to tell this to you so that you do not feel blindsided by this information, right? So that you do not feel as if though I am withholding something from you in the space where, as Pardison said in his record, I was thinking about, or I was tossing around the idea of being married to you. I was tossing around the idea of being with you for the rest of my life, right? These things are very heavy things. These things are deep concepts and deep realities that a lot of us in our relationships, right? A lot of us in our dynamics, we would want our partner to be upfront with us. We at the very least would like the opportunity to be told this is what happened, and then give us the opportunity to deal with that truth the way that we want to deal with it, right? I firmly believe that Pardison Fontaine's record was a revelation of sorts, right? It was a response to not being given the opportunity to say, hey, I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this, right? And that's the reality for him. That's the reality of a lot of men, actually. The idea that, women feel the need to withhold, or women feel the need to abstain from telling their partner the entirety of their sexual history or the entirety of their engagements with other people, right? Because once again, I'm not saying that it's justified. I'm not saying that man was right. What I'm saying is that I can understand why a number of women are apprehensive about this. Because fellas, we tend to not handle that shit well. We tend to not deal with the reality that a woman is just as sexual as we are well. So a number of women are primed, or a number of women are taught to believe that you shouldn't tell a man that. You shouldn't tell a man that whole truth. You should not engage with a man in such a way where he is going to know the entirety of your person, because he might look at you as a whole, right? As a clinician who deals with both couples and individuals, my thing is, if that person is going to leave you for something like that, allow them to leave you. It's better than you being a liar, or it's better than you being found out and not giving your partner the opportunity to engage in such a way where they have the ability to adjust or adapt themselves to the truth of the matter. It's very clear that Megan is a sexually liberated woman. It's very clear that Megan has no issue talking about her sexual prowess and how it is that those things impact men. That's okay, right? Where I believe the boundary is that if you allow me, even me, myself as a man, I would feel some type of way if somebody let me engage with somebody who they had previous relations with and they didn't tell me, right? Because my thing is that I'm not upset that you had sex with this man. I'm not. I'm more upset that you didn't tell me, right? I'm more upset that you did not allow me the space and allow me the ability to acclimate myself to the reality, to the very present reality that you out here fucking, or you was fucking, right? We grown. We are grown individuals, right? We are adults. And what that means is that if we are looking for that type of open and honest and vulnerable communication in relationships, as it relates to emotional intelligence, as it relates to wanting to trust your partner, you got to be prepared for what you ask for, dog. You got to be prepared for what you ask for. But on the other side of that, a lot of us are not prepared to tell somebody the entire truth. A lot of us are not prepared to let somebody know, like, yo, this is what's going on. This is how it went, because we are afraid of retaliation. And for a lot of us, that is informed through our trauma with our parents. Oh, I'm not going to hit you. You're not going to be in trouble. The truth will set you free. I tell you the truth. Now, all of a sudden, I'm halfway across the room. I thought you wasn't going to hit. I thought you wasn't going to be mad. Right? How many of y'all have started a conversation with a partner or started a conversation with somebody with promise you won't be mad, right? Promise you won't be upset. You are anticipating not only just a negative, but a harmful response based upon your truth, right? So another one of my friends who is a woman, we were talking about the way in which we as individuals have a parasocial, P-A-R-A, social, parasocial relationship with celebrities. What does that mean? Para means to the side, right? Or para means on the side of. So parasocial would mean that we tend to look at celebrities' relationships, or we tend to look at celebrity situations as parallel to our own, right? And we tend to do that because the way in which we look at celebrities, or the way in which we look at these particular situations, we want to be relatable, right? We want to relate to them. And some of us, we tend to idolize celebrities. Because these people have reached this pinnacle of this success, then that means that they're doing something differently than I am doing in my own relationships. Or they are doing something differently than I am doing in my own life. So we look to them, not necessarily for guidance, but we look to them as goals. Oh, Megan, part of your goals, this and the third. So when they fall from grace, it's hard for us to watch, right? It's hard for us to deal with. It is a particular type of grief that we engage in as individuals who are watching this dynamic. And we are saying to ourselves, somebody has to be at fault, right? Somebody has to be the villain in this situation, which Pardison, once again, said in his record, like, I guess your new record needed a villain. Now, as a man who has dealt with a lot of emotional harm, as a man who has dealt with a lot of emotional pain, as a man who has fumbled situations, and as a man who has been fumbled in situations, I can tell you that there are a number of reasons why somebody may not reveal something to, right? There are a number of reasons as to why somebody may identify you as a villain. There are a number of times where I've had to identify with myself and say, you know what? In order for this person to process what it is that they are processing, I have to be the villain. Y'all gotta excuse me, man. I sincerely apologize. My bad, y'all on Instagram. my alarm came up or my screen time came up and I had to make the do what it do. And on YouTube, I'm definitely gonna edit that part out because I'm trying to do this whole YouTube in the mix and the editing thing. But besides the point, we gonna edit all that out. But there have been a myriad of times where I have had to accept that I would be the villain in somebody's story because in order for them to process what was going on internally, that's what I had to be. Right? I had to be the person who had done everything wrong. I had to be the person who had done the bigger harm. But for me, the reality of the situation was I felt strongly, not necessarily that I had not done anything wrong, but the response was incongruent, right? The way in which the situation unfolded, there were still some things that I felt strongly that I responded based upon an anxiety response, a trauma response, a number of those different things, right? In a lot of situations, we tend to look at celebrity relationships. We tend to look at a lot of relationships. Ooh, y'all say that y'all can't hear me. Okay, give me a quick second. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna close this out. We're gonna come back in and we're gonna start it back up, right? So once again, I'm gonna have to edit this out for the YouTube joint, but I definitely got you on Instagram. Give me a quick second. Woo. We back. So I'm gonna give it a little second, let people pop in, pile in. All right, so y'all, we back. Y'all should be able to hear the audio. Can y'all hear the audio well? Indeed. We back. Bitch up, what up, my boy? All right, so I gotta tell myself that this is where we're gonna start again from the YouTube recording. So, all right, bam. Okay, so as I was saying previously, there are a lot of different ways in which we frame the things that we see, or we frame the things that we perceive from our own trauma, right? We tend to look at other people's relationships, other people's dynamics, other people's engagements, even the way that other people tend to respond to particular situations. We tend to look at that from the lens of our own trauma, right? And when we do that, what we tend to overlook is how it is that our trauma informs our own behaviors, right? So the way that it is that I began conceptualizing, because we know that Meg has issues with anxiety. We know that Meg has issues with depression. We know that Meg has these pre-existing things that could potentially make it difficult to navigate and to regulate emotions in such a way where other people are not, right? And the reason why I bring this up is not to demonize Meg. It is not to negate or minimize what it is that she's experiencing as a woman. I feel that a lot of times when we have these conversations, or when we try to have these conversations around the nuance and the engagement of relationships, we tend to beat down on women, right? We tend to, oh, well, she's in the I'm not here to do none of that shit. Like, y'all know me. Y'all know I don't rock like that. What I'm here to do is I'm here to bring the reality that trauma shifts the way that it is that you engage with people overall, right? Which would bring more validity to what it is that Pardison is saying in his track, right? She was texting these other dudes. She had me dap him up when, she had fucked him or she was fucking him. All of the things in Pardison's record. It is difficult for me as a man who has been in experiences like this to negate what it is that he's saying simply because he decided to retaliate, right? Which is the reason why I'm saying that he's not innocent. If he cheated, he cheated, right? He did what he did. And I'm not justifying what it is that he did at all. What I'm saying is that in a number of relationship dynamics, in a number of situations, there are times and there are engagements where if we are not careful, we tend to harm an individual in such a way, or we tend to show them that we cannot be trusted with handling that truth. That, you know what, I can't deal with you when you like this, right? It's difficult for me to love you at your lowest because you're harming me actively, right? You are genuinely causing me harm in your space of harm, And I don't know how to deal with that. My capacity has been reached, right? I firmly believe that a number of men do not know how to do that well. They don't, right? Which is the reason why Pardison probably ended up doing what it is that he did, right? It is this thought, or it is this perception that it is easier, and it's gonna sound real crazy, y'all, but hear me out. It is easier for me to cheat, or it is easier for me to cause problems than it is for me to solve them. Why? Because I'm used to problems. I am used to conflict. I am used to turmoil. I am used to difficulty, right? I've had clients tell me, I don't know how to be healed because it is easier for me to be broken, right? It is easier for me to be in the space where I am familiar with my broken pieces than to have to regulate my whole self, right? And I firmly believe that that's what was going on with Megan, right? I firmly believe that Meg was going through her anxieties, her depressions, things of that nature, and it was harming Pardison in such a way where he was not able to communicate how it was harming him, right? In his track, he was saying how he was covering for her, right? I am not saying this, I'm not saying that, right? I am protecting your image. I'm trying to make sure that people do not have a reason to jump down your throat, right? Usually when we hear this, it's a woman protecting a man's image. Usually when we hear this, it is a woman attempting to not derail a man's life. Very rarely do we hear it from the perspective of a man saying to you, know what? I know that you're not perfect. You've harmed me. You've done these things to me, but I know that your community, I know that your followers, I know that the people who look up to you, I know that all of these different people perceive you differently than I perceive you. So I'm not going to out you in this way. I'm not going to harm you in this way, right? I'm not going to reveal to other people who you actually are. Why? Because I might be wrong. You might just do this with me, right? You may not do this with other people. It might be something that I'm doing, right? I posted something on my Instagram timeline a couple of weeks ago about how it is that women harm men, how it is that, yes, because in this case, she is the more famous and wealthy person. That's fair, right? So I've posted something on my Instagram timeline a couple of weeks ago. And one of the brothers said, and I felt like the comment was very profound. He said, why do people not believe that men stay in harmful relationships for the same reason that women do? Why do we not look at it from the perspective that this man may have been waiting for her to change? Why do we not look at it from the perspective that this man may have been waiting for her to be the woman that he believed that she could be, right? Why do we not give men the space to fall in love with potential and then be harmed by that person not being able to hit that potential, that emotional potential? Right? Which is the reason why, a part of me resonated very deeply with how it is that Pardison was approaching this record, right? Because I've been in situations like that. There are other men who have been in situations like that. There are men who have waited for their partner to be the partner that they were looking for them to be. And because that partner could not get over themselves, or could not process through themselves, or could not see themselves, right? One of my favorite things to say, especially as it relates to relationships, is that if you are not ready to face the you that you are, and you are in denial about yourself, there is a high probability that you have gaslit your partner. I'm gonna say that one more time. If you are not ready to face the you that you are, and you are not ready to come to terms with the you that you are, there is a high probability you have gaslit your partner, because what your partner saw in you, you were not ready to see of yourself. And I firmly believe that this is what had transpired in this situation, right? Because the story that we hear a lot of is that men do not handle their emotions well. Men do not do these things well. Men do not engage with these types of dynamics well. 5% of men, 9% of women. In the United States, when they are dealing with mental health issues, go to seek treatment. 5% of men, 9% of women. That means that in both genders, less than 10%. Less than 10%, which means that for men, 95% and for women, 91% will not go. They will not seek the help that they need, right? But a lot of times I firmly believe that we as a society, we as black folks, we believe because we have more examples of men and because the way that it is that we utilize black men as, yes, in IG education is not therapy, right? But the way that it is that we are used to villainizing black men, right? And I'm not saying that black men don't got accountability. Y'all know I don't come like that, right? But because this archetype or because this schema is so easily accessible, that is the first thing that we reach for. Because a lot of us as black people have been harmed by our black fathers. It is easier for us to see the harm that black men cause and then to continue to go along that narrative of this is the only thing that has transpired. Is it easily accessible or is it more of them? And I was going to get to that point. Thank you for that segue, right? Another thing that I see happening is that we believe that because men do it more, that they are the only ones that do it. Or because men are more probable, that they are the only ones that do. Baby. Baby. Let me tell y'all something. Probability does not negate possibility. Probability does not negate possibility. What do I mean by that? Just because one person does it more does not mean that the other person is incapable of doing it, right? Whenever I talk about harm in black relationships, I always bring up the National Coalition of Domestic Violence statistics. For black people specifically, the statistics of relationship-based harm is much closer than we like to talk about. It is much closer, right? Black men and black women, the percentage points of the harm that we experience in relationships at the most is 15 percentage points. At the least, it's negative 3.2, I think, the last time I looked at it. And the reason why it's negative 3.2 is because black men experience more they report more psychological abuse and harm in relationships than black women do. Black women, it's about 53%. Black men, it's about 56%, right? So once again, we cannot continue to have these conversations in relationships with black people, black men, black women, as if though we cannot dissect or we cannot be more nuanced in these conversations. Once again, I'm not here to say Meg is innocent. I'm not here to say that Pardison is guilty. What I'm here to say is that this is a great example. This is a fantastic example. If we take the time to break it down of how it is that we, as normal folk, as non-celebrity folk, right, can get really caught up in how it is that these celebrities live their lives and how it is that they move in their relationships and how our trauma and how it is that we project our trauma into these situationships, relationships, dynamics, and how it is that we can take these things as a learning example to say to ourselves, why was I so impacted by this? Why was I so, engaged with this? Why did this bother me so much, right? So for example, as a man, the reason why it resonated with me or struck me or triggered me is because I've been in situations where I was being outright harmed. Right? Why? Because I was not regulating appropriately, because I didn't know how to handle what it is that I was engaging in. And my previous partner decided that because I was a man, that because it was heightened, was appropriate. In other words, I'm going to make you feel the way that I feel right now, right? I'm going to harm you, or I'm going to respond to you in such a way where the emotions that I cannot communicate, I can show you. I can show you better than I can tell you, right? And when Pardison said, I guess your album needed a new villain, brother, I'm not saying that you're not the villain, right? But what I am saying strongly is that the way in which we contextualize a number of these dynamics, we resonate with them and we respond to them a lot of times based upon our own experiences, right? Based upon our own relationship, based upon our own engagements with whether it be men, women, masculine presenting people, femme presenting people. We have all in a such way been victims to some type of harm, right? But at the same time and of the same token, that does not mean that all of a sudden now you are no longer capable of giving harm, right? We have this perception that because somebody has been victimized, they cannot victimize somebody else. That is very rarely the case. What is more usually the case is that through their trauma, a victim has learned how to engage in a particular type of back and forth, and they utilize that same survival technique. They utilize that same response. They utilize that same harm dynamic in order to protect themselves, right? But does it justify it? Does it make it right? Does it make it fair? And in most situations, it does not, right? That's the reason why when I was talking to my content creator friend, she was like, oh, are you saying that Pardison? I'm like, no, I'm not saying none of that shit. None of it. I feel like both of them are guilty for different reasons, right? But what I am saying is that this idea that one is innocent and one is guilty, or one is right and one is wrong, is usually a reflection of how it is that we would like to be validated in our own previous traumatic experiences with other people. I want to be seen as the person who should not have been harmed, right? I want to be seen as the person who did not do anything to be harmed. I want to be seen as the person who was the absolute victim, right? There are very rarely absolute victims. Very rare, right? Very rarely are there an absolute victim, right? So, for example, once again, I'm gonna say it the same thing. I'm gonna say it again. With the Cassie and Diddy thing, that motherfucker did that. Whatever they said Diddy did, that motherfucker did that. He did it. Diddy did it. You can't say Diddy without did. That motherfucker did it, right? Why? Because we can very clearly see from his behavioral, right? That's one of them situations, I don't need no more evidence. You did that shit, my boy. You did that shit. You did that shit. You did it, right? That's one of those situations where I'm like, no, Cassie was definitely victimized, right? And then for Kid Cudi to turn around and say, yeah, Diddy tried to blow my car up? Yeah. We knew that nigga Diddy was a menace when he made people run across New York for some cheesecake. We should have knew that motherfucker was a megalomaniac at that time. That was crazy, right? Go get me a cheesecake and then come and sing for me. That's something different. In this situation, where we have been given information, or we have been given these particles of information, or we have been given these particular situations that we are latching on to, right? At times, we have to accept within ourselves that we are projecting some of our own traumas into these situations. We have to admit within ourselves that sometimes we want this person to be innocent because we want to be seen as innocent, right? But if we really sit down the same way I had to do, the same way that I expected whoever it is that want to spin the block, previous partners, whatever, my expectation is that you sit down and you ask yourself, yo, is the way that I responded to this appropriate? Or was it fueled by the fear that I was taught from my trauma? Was it fueled by the anxieties that existed within my space? Was it fueled by something other than what it is that you've done, right? And that's the only dog that I got in this fight, for real, right? Are we, as people who are observing this thing going on, right? Are we, as individuals who are fans of these people, are we really taking the time to sit back and say, you know what, damn, I'm seeing this way because this is the experience that I had. And I want to be able to validate this person. I want to be able to see this person the way that it is that I was not seen, right? I want to be able to uplift this person in the way that it is that I was not uplifted, right? I want to be able to identify strongly that, you know what, damn, this person was going through the same thing that I was going through, and I'm gonna support them the whole way. I understand, I recognize, I can validate that. But on the other side of that, we also have to be very clear about the trauma that we experience. We also have to be very clear about how it is that we as individuals have caused other people trauma, and how it is that sometimes the way that it is that somebody else responded to us, we probably had that shit coming, right? So I say all of those things to say, if we are honest about how it is that this played out, right? If we really want to have more informative conversations, more educational conversations, more building conversations when these type of things occur, right? We have to approach these things critically. We have to ask ourselves like, yo, once again, why am I resonating so deeply with one person over the other, right? Why am I saying to myself, damn, like, fuck what this other person talking about. I don't give a damn what evidence you bring me. That motherfucker did it. Why is that your position? What in your life or what in your experience has driven you to this point of absolute victimhood, absolute victimization, right? Ultimately, if I want to leave y'all with anything, I want to leave y'all with this, right? In the Megan and Pardison situation, a lot of us are responding this way because we've been in relationships that have played out this way. We have been in relationships where we have felt gaslit. We have been in relationships where we have felt undermined. We have been in relationships where we have felt lied to, and we moved accordingly, right? That's fair. That's fair. But my question to you is this: are you learning from them, right? Are you doing the deep person work, the deep shadow work, the deep soul work to remove yourself from these protective factors or these defensive factors, right? Are you really opening yourself up to the opportunity of being fully and deeply loved? Or are you holding on to the reality of your past that will protect you from further harm, right? So I'm gonna leave y'all with this. I was reading a quote, and if you go into my Instagram story right now, go through it and you'll see it. What it says is that dating now is less about curiosity and more about protecting oneself from trauma. It is no longer a game of curiosity, right? It's no longer something where we can go in, ooh, I hit that hard. It's no longer something where we can go in and say, you know what, I just want to learn about this person. I just want to engage with this person. I just want to understand who this person is, right? Dating is now a game of evaluation, assessment, and protection from trauma, right? So for all my people who are dating out there, for all my people who are looking for their person, for all the people who are moving in these streets and recognize that the dating pool got piss in it, let me ask you a question, sincere question, right? Are you truly opening up yourself to what is there for you? Or are you clinging on to the trauma that you've experienced before, right? But good people, great people, guys, people, I'm about to pop off this recording for YouTube. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Peace.